The airplane cabin buzzed softly with the steady hum of the engines, the low chatter of passengers, and the occasional clink of a coffee cup. David Langford sank into his wide first-class seat, loosening his tie and rubbing his temples. His schedule had been relentless. Meetings in 3 countries in 4 days, and though his company's quarterly earnings were about to break records, he felt like a machine running on fumes. He opened his laptop, the familiar glow lighting his tired face. Charts, numbers, presentations, and all blending together in a haze. He took a sip of black coffee, hoping the bitterness would wake him, but instead, it only deepened the exhaustion in his chest. He could barely remember the last time he'd had a full night's sleep. A soft voice came from across the aisle. "You look tired, sir." He turned his head, startled. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, sat next to the window clutching a worn-out teddy bear. Her big brown eyes were studying him with the kind of honesty only children had. David blinked, caught off guard. "I suppose I am," he said, forcing a polite smile. The girl nodded seriously, her small legs swinging in the air. "My mom says when people are tired in their eyes, it's not just because they didn't sleep enough. It's because they forgot to be happy." For a moment, David didn't know how to respond. The words hit him in a strange way. Simple, yet unsettlingly true. He looked down at his reflection in the laptop screen and saw it clearly. Tired eyes. Yes, but also empty ones. He smiled faintly, trying to sound casual. "Your mom sounds very wise." The girl grinned. "She is. She says even grown-ups need to rest their hearts sometimes." Her mother gently hushed her, apologizing for the interruption. But David shook his head. "It's all right," he said softly. "She's right." As the plane rose above the clouds, David tried to return to his work. But he couldn't. The little girl's words echoed in his mind, pulling at something deep within him, a reminder that maybe success had cost him more than he'd realized. He closed his laptop for the first time in a long time and stared out the window, watching the fading sunlight streak the sky with gold. A few hours passed, and the steady rhythm of the flight settled into quiet comfort. Most passengers were either asleep or lost in their screens. David had tried to focus on his work again, emails, projections, numbers, but his mind kept wandering back to that little girl's words. "Rest your heart." He wasn't sure when he'd last done that. Maybe never. Across the aisle, the girl was now leaning against her mother, watching something on a small tablet. A soft giggle escaped her every now and then, but soon the laughter stopped, and David heard her whisper, "Mom, it's not working." The screen had gone dark. Her mother sighed gently, apologizing that the battery was dead, and said she'd have to wait until they landed. David hesitated for a moment, then reached into his bag and pulled out his tablet. "She can borrow mine if that's all right," he offered. The little girl's eyes widened. "Really?" He nodded, handing it over. "Just promise me you won't fill it with princess stickers." She laughed. "I'll try." Her mother smiled gratefully, and within seconds, the girl was happily watching a cartoon. But not long after, she paused the show and turned to him again. "Do you have kids?" David froze for a second. The question caught him off guard. "No," he said with a small, awkward smile. "No, I don't." "Why not?" she asked, completely innocent. He hesitated, glancing at the empty glass of water on his tray. "I guess I never had time." The girl frowned as if trying to solve a difficult riddle. "That's sad," she said softly. "My daddy says time is like cookies. You have to share it before it's gone." David felt a lump rise in his throat. He looked at her, then out the window. The clouds drifted below like soft white mountains, and he suddenly wondered how many sunsets he'd missed sitting in boardrooms. Instead of just looking, the girl didn't seem to notice his silence. She went back to talking about her school, how she loved building things, how one day she wanted to make robots that help lonely people smile. "Robots that make people smile?" he asked, amused. She nodded eagerly. "Yes, because people forget how to smile sometimes, but if a robot reminds them, they'll remember." Her simple imagination made him laugh. A real, unguarded laugh, the kind he hadn't felt in years, the kind that warmed his chest instead of straining it. For the rest of the flight, they talked on and off, about inventions, favorite animals, even about what clouds might taste like. And though it was just a conversation between a tired man and a curious little girl, something inside David began to shift. The noise in his head, the constant hum of deadlines and deals, grew quiet for the first time in as long as he could remember. by the time the captain announced their descent. David wasn't thinking about quarterly goals or stock prices. He was thinking about cookies, clouds, and what it really meant to share time before it's gone. The plane touched down gently, the wheels humming against the runway as passengers stirred awake, gathering their things. David blinked against the sudden brightness coming through the window. The little girl was already bouncing in her seat, her teddy bear tucked under one arm, excited to tell her father about the trip. He helped her mother reach for a bag in the overhead compartment. "Thank you," she said warmly. "And thank you for letting her use your tablet. She kept saying you're the nicest man she's met on a plane." David smiled, genuinely this time. Not the polite smile he used in boardrooms, but something softer. "She's a remarkable little girl," he said. "She reminded me of a few things I'd forgotten." As the passengers began filing out, the little girl turned to him one last time. "Don't forget to get happy, okay?" she said, waving her small hand. He chuckled, but his voice was quiet. "I won't," he promised. And for some reason, he meant it. Outside the airport, as he waited for his driver, the air felt different, fresher somehow. The city lights blinked in the distance. But instead of feeling the usual pull toward his schedule, he found himself standing still, watching people greet loved ones, children running into arms that had missed them. For a moment he wished he had someone waiting too. That night in his hotel room, the silence pressed in around him. Normally he'd dive straight into work, answering messages, planning meetings, chasing numbers. But tonight he just sat by the window, watching the reflection of the city lights shimmer across the glass. He thought about the girl's words. "You have to share time before it's gone." Then about the robot she wanted to build to help lonely people smile. He opened his laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard, but this time, the document he created was blank. No spreadsheets, no presentations. At the top, he typed slowly, "Project Cookie Time. Technology that connects, not consumes." He didn't know exactly what it would become, but for the first time in years, the idea wasn't about profit. It was about people. David leaned back, a small, tired smile, touching his face, and the kind that comes from a quiet realization rather than success. He closed his laptop and turned off the lights. Outside, the city kept glowing, alive and busy, but inside that dim hotel room, something in him had finally rested. He had found a kind of peace he hadn't known he was searching for. A peace given to him not by a deal, but by a child who reminded him what it meant to feel alive.